All right. Good afternoon, friends, and a very warm welcome to this 20th in the series webinar, which is presented by International Human Resource Development Initiative this Sunday afternoon. And friends, this is a good news that we have just passed our teen, and IHRDI this is 20th webinar, so moving towards more matured state. And with your support and effort, we have been able to do it since the last 20 weeks. The topic, friends, today is a very burning issue, which is in air since the last around 2 weeks or so. The topic is SDG goal number 13, which talks about climate action. And as you are aware that, the stubble burning is there, wherein a lot of politicking is being done in our country. Then the air quality index in Delhi is deteriorating. This is another news which is therein. Then certain states and UTs like Delhi, Chandigarh, and even Karnataka, they have banned the use of firecrackers during the Diwali season, which is also in air, and lot of politicking is being done therein after also. And 2 weeks back, you would have seen that the quote by President Trump that India is one of the filthiest country in the world. That was also there, which put a lot of emphasis on the air pollution and the quality of air in India. 21 out of the 30 cities that India has, they are the most polluting cities in the world. And as per the World Health Organization estimates, around 65 lakhs or 6.5 million people, they die because of various, air related pollution diseases. And out of them, 50% they come from India and China. Precisely, India contributes around 1.16 lakhs, that means 1.6 million, and China contributes around 19 lakhs or 1.9 million. So with this background, friends, this means that there's lot of trajectory which is on for this topic as such. And if you also talk about, there's always a conflict between the industrial growth and the economical growth and environment. They are always, inversely proportional to each other. That is how it has been projected as such. And especially with many forums coming up, and then lot like Paris Convention and all this, which I've talked about, wherein there's a lot of conflict between the developing and the developed world as such. Now, the present the burning issue is that whether with Joe Biden coming up, what will be America's stand onto all this. So friends, we'll be discussing all this, and then a lot of negative impacts that have come out because of climate change. There's been glaciers are melting, the temperature of ocean is rising, the flora and fauna is being disturbed, and even certain island nations and island cities, they say, will be submerged. So it's a huge challenge, and it's a huge conflict which is there. And then lot of initiative by the governments throughout Committee of Nations is being therein, and many of things need still to be done. So in this view, the SDGs goals came about in the year 2015, which promulgated around 17 goals, 169 targets, and more than 350 indicators, which were all inclusive in nature. And they tried to come up with the economic development on one hand side, so that the future is also safe and secure, so that the flora, fauna, biodiversity that we see today is not lost to the future. So the word sustainable development caught about. And friends, as you know that last week we did an introduction to the goals and how sustainable development goals were promulgated, and how UN came about all this, and what has been done this regard. And then, as promised to you, we'll be taking randomly, though, of course, all these 17 goals. And this time we are taking the goal number 13, which is on very important aspect and balances the economic with the environment. Just to remind you, even on the risk of being repetitive, these 17 goals include no poverty, zero hunger, good health, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reducing inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, which is our focus today, life below water, life below land, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions, and partnership for goals. And if you just go through them, all these goals are inclusive in nature. They include both the developing and the developed world. They are not in silos because they are not only for the government and authorities. They talk about civil societies also. They talk about all people who are therein and who will be able to come out with the development as such for these goals. And they also talk about that no one is left behind and the last man should be the first. And this we have done last week, but just because we have people from all diverse fields joining us and on the basis of it. And friends, to discuss all these and the question answer format that we started last time, we'll be continuing with this. We have three very eminent people who have done a lot of, and I think this is a very wonderful panel because they are very diverse in nature, but with a similar goal to protect our environment. Dr. Sudhir Sharma joins us from UNEP. Dr. Srikanth Panigri joins us from New Delhi IIST, and Dr. ISN Raju, who joins us from Hyderabad. Just a brief about the three very eminent panelists. Dr. Sudhir Sharma is presently working with the UNEP, United Nations Environment Program, Bangkok, Thailand. He's a civil engineer from IIT Kanpur, and he's also done his PhD from the PhD in Development Economics from Indira Gandhi Institute of Development Research, Mumbai. And thereafter, at presently, he is with UNEP and also looking after the Green Climate Fund portfolio in Asia and Pacific. He's been working in UN for over 15 years, and out of which 6 were with the Secretariat of UNFCCC. At UNFCCC, he supported the negotiations on finance and capacity building, support for developing countries, and was secretary to the methodologies panel for the CDM or Clean Development Mechanism. And friends, he is an expert in policy and regulatory work on climate mitigation, carbon markets, and greenhouse gases inventories. So friends, sir, welcome to this program and many thanks for being with us and sparing your Sunday afternoon, which I know is a very difficult task to do. And friends, our second very important and very eminent panelist is Dr. Srikanth Panigri. Presently is working as Director General, Indian Institute of Sustainable Development, New Delhi, which is doing a wonderful work in the area of sustainable development. He is, friends, a member to Prime Minister's Strategic Knowledge Mission on Climate Change. And he is also a part of National Steering Committee member of TIFAC, which is Technology, Information Forecasting and Assessment Council, Government of India. He is a policy advisor and author, a knowledge expert on clean and renewable energy in carbon management and in sustainability. As regards his qualification goes, he is also a civil engineer and specialized in environment planning. And he's also been a fellow with UNEP and UNESCO. And rather, friends, it gives me a lot of pleasure to inform that he's the chief architect of Indian carbon market in India and also instrumental in introducing Kyoto Protocol in India. He is the one who was instrumental in formulation of 10th and 11th 5-year plan in environment and the forest sector. And he's received many awards, and one award he received was National Science Popularization Award from the Honorable Prime Minister of India in the year 2004-2005 for contribution in popularizing science among us common mass for 20 years. So welcome, sir, and it's a great pleasure to have you with us. I am sure with your knowledge, the participants will be learning a lot about what needs to be done into this regard. Welcome, sir. The third panelist, my dear friends, is Dr. I. Satyanarayan Raju. Dr. Saab is a former chief engineer. He retired from the government of Andhra Pradesh, Hyderabad, and he is also a civil engineer, and but very passionate about academics also because he did his BTech, then MTech, then MBA, MPhil, and PhD. And he has also, to his credit, several diplomas that he created during that he completed during his service. He joined the government of Andhra Pradesh as assistant XCN in the irrigation department and retired as the chief engineer in one of the very prestigious department of the government of Andhra Pradesh, Central Designs Organization. He managed during his time Krishna River floods in the year 2009 as special officer for monitoring, and he also received many awards during his time. Rather, one was the Best Irrigation Engineer Award in the year 2003, which was awarded by the CM of Andhra Pradesh. And after retirement, as regards his passion is academics, so he joined the Andhra Pradesh HRDI, Andhra Pradesh Human Resource Development Institution, which is ATI of Andhra Pradesh, now divided and based at Bapatla now. So he joined as the senior project manager of UNICEF-supported Center for Sustainable Development Goals, and he was there in the year 2018-19, 2 years. And while he was there, he organized a number of programs of seminars, conferences, workshops, training programs on sustainable development goals. And he is also the past chairman of Institution of Engineers. And presently, he is a visiting faculty to various universities, to various institutions, including Mahatma Gandhi State Institute of Public Administration. And I have met him personally, one of the programs of the Government of India, Ek Bharat Shresth Bharat, wherein, the these two states are clubbed with each other just to know the culture of each other. So Punjab was clubbed up with Andhra Pradesh. So we visited therein, and therein I met Dr. Raju and found him to be very passionate. And thereafter, and this was in February. So their visit is due to Mahatma Gandhi State Institute and the Chandigarh and Punjab. So I think hopefully once things get better, they'll arrange a visit to our place also. But then we were very much looked after while we were there in Andhra Pradesh. So thank you, Dr. Raju, and thank you for joining the panel the last moment, because this was only last, I think, 10 o'clock yesterday, wherein we discussed that he has done a lot of work in the disaster mitigation. I didn't know that, somehow, slipped from me. So thank you so much, and very warm welcome to you, sir, for joining on this panel. And I hope your experience, expertise, will be able to do a lot of justice, because I think that now the panel is very well balanced with academicians and theoreticians and practitioners, and who have done a lot of work. And then this will be a good good data for even the policy makers later. So, sir, with your permission, now I'll start it will be a question answer sessions wherein the things will be clear. That is the format, and I'll throw open the question that any one of you can take up, and then this could be supplemented by the others also therein. All right, sir. So, sir, my first question is, what is climate change? So, any of the three panelists would like to talk about this? Unmute.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
So, sir. Just only for introduction, so I add that climate change is what nature earlier is giving the health and wealth to the country is now changed. So one thing is there is a reduction, rainfall has got reduced, temperature have gone up, and the seasonals also got changed. So just now you told that even the disasters also is happening because of the climate change. So now it is the role and responsibility of, and everybody thinks that only government will do it, but it's not the government alone can do it. So the public must be 100% participatory. Management is very much required. So one of the important aspect of this SDGs is empowering the stakeholders, empowering the public, so that they take responsibility. Only organizing will be done by the government, either it is UN or Government of India or the state governments, and also institutions like your ATIs like your Punjab and other things. So capacity building is most important, because the common man must know every time he is blaming that one disaster comes, he is blaming the government. So that is not correct, that he is a common man, is a part of disasters. His role is also there. So we cannot avoid disasters. Only thing is to minimize the damages, whether it is in life or to this one else. And these are internationally accepted things that the disasters are happening due to climate change. That is a very important thing. Right. And here one point I want to add you. Fossil fuels, now everybody is producing power mostly on coal-based thermal power. So that is actually the crux of the problem now. So one of the important thing is energy. Renewable energy, we should produce renewable energy, that is by hydropower and also solar power. So unless we enhance these two capacities, then only the climate change impact will be get reduced. And there is the goals of one of the UN, one publication was also there in 2019. So about there was a rise in temperature of 1.5 degrees when compared to the baseline. but ultimately they say that by 2050, these carbon emissions must be brought to zero, and by 2030, the goal this one, it will be a single digit one. So these are some of the things. So climate change, indirectly, it is impacting. So either too much of, I think, either floods and cyclones or droughts. So that is the impact of the climate change that is happening, that is impacting this one. And everybody thinks that floods are in rural areas. Now urban flood is the more crux of the problem now. So whether you see Chennai or you see Hyderabad or anywhere, even Delhi also, the urban flood is making a lot of negative impact, because everybody thinks that urban people are very literate people. But actually, so now everything has become a concrete jungle in all the cities. That is one of the reasons for this climate change also. So these are some of the things I want to share, and and join you here now and then when others are speaking. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you. Dr. Srikant Panigrahi, and sir, would you like to add upon what?
Yes.
Sir.
Climate change, since the day the human activities started taking place, men started the use of knowing the use of fire. The nomads started learning how to use fire. Men cleared forest and went for agriculture. The activities, human activities, keep on increasing, and so more and more activities, the demand for industrialization, development, human aspirations in food, in shelter, in clothes, in all kind of need kept on increasing. And ultimately what happened, there is a lot of emission started taking place. And from the scientific research, and it has been established, there are 6 greenhouse gases.
Right.
These 6 greenhouse gases are responsible for global warming. From ice age till now, there is a continuous rise in temperature, global planet's temperature, and we are in a situation where we exceeded the minimum tolerance limit of the planet, and we are 1.15 degree centigrade above than the normal, and IPCC, all the international organizations, everybody is very much concerned how to keep this temperature rise and global warming and anthropogenic gases which are getting emitted because of human activities can be reduced, minimized, and so that if the planet can be made livable. We all are living in one place, that is planet, this Earth, and there is the environment doesn't obey geographical boundaries, and so if a pressure in air is created, lower pressure, it doesn't know which country is there next door, and because of rise of temperature and anthropogenic emissions, and this particularly the 6 greenhouse gases, it starts with carbon dioxide, methane, nitrogen oxide, and PFC to SF6. All these gases, carbon dioxide is having a least global warming potential, and it increases, whereas methane has 28 times more global warming potential. So these gases को काबू में लेना है और इसका emission घटाना है. If you see the human history in Europe, industrial revolution happened, and people were glad when they see some black fume in the sky, and because it was the indicator of development, and now it has become reverse. It has made threat to us for our survival. We all are having one home, and now because when it has been established by scientists through study, when there is a 1 degree rise, around 35% plant and animal life gets extincted. There is a huge change in ocean currents pattern. The cold currents is becoming hot currents are becoming cold currents. Pressure belts of the air is shifting. This sea level rise is happening. There are many islands has already been vanished by now, and we are already realized and encountering the impact of climate change in our daily day-to-day life. And it is the question of protecting our only home in which we are living. And if the home is at danger, we doesn't stay. And there are various projections, there are various scenarios, there is a lot of climate change modeling, scientific studies taken by various agencies in which some of them we are engaged in. And ultimately, the climate action is the key. And if we are not taking right action at right time, we'll miss the bus. And we have already. It is not that we have not missed the bus. We have already missed the bus, and the dangers start galloping. As Dr. Raju told, disaster management. There are many such manifestations which has given signals, and nature is very tolerant. The water doesn't say don't pollute me. The air doesn't shout protect me please. The earth tolerates, nature tolerates everything silently. Policing is very difficult. Nobody, if somebody is not raising alarm for its own protection, it's very difficult. And all the humans are greedy by nature, and they think themselves and their comfort, and nobody cares for community, and next comes the planet, and it is all interlinked. And now we are in a position where we cannot afford. Now nature has started reacting. It is minimum tolerance limit has been adjusted. As a consequence, disasters are getting in, and all sorts of problems started taking place. So this change in climate, that weather pattern, and the agricultural production has drastically going down. The quality and quantity of water is very much impacted. Airborne diseases, vector-borne diseases are rising. So all are these are implications of climate change.
Right.
So the climate action is the key, and for which this goal 13th is meant for. And it is not only the responsibility of the politicians or the bureaucrats or the policymakers. It is the responsibility of all the stakeholders, including each of us. We need to live a climate-friendly lifestyle. We have to know we have to mind in every moment what we are doing, and whether it is contributing to how much greenhouse gas is being emitted. If I am doing this start, if it is terracotta, it is not cotton, then how much greenhouse gases I am emitting? If I am eating this kind of food, so all the activities has its reflection in greenhouse gas emission. And there are adaptation and mitigation. There are many approaches to climate change, which we will discuss subsequently. I think I should not take more time. I will keep myself here.
Yeah, thank you, Srikant sir. Dr. Sharma, Dr. Sudhir Sharma. Now, can you please elaborate on this, the SDG goal number 13? What do you think is the crux of this goal that the SDG has adopted?
Thanks, Professor Chaddha, and thanks for the kind invitation, and pleasure joining all of your guests in this seminar today. So as Dr. Satyanarayan Raju and Dr. Panigrahi mentioned, climate change has become the most, to take the name of a very famous Hollywood movie, clear and present danger to existence of humanity. Now in that context, and also I think Dr. Panigrahi mentioned, or maybe Dr. Raju, that we need to get our GHG greenhouse gas emissions down to 2050. If we have to it doesn't mean that we will avoid climate change, but we will minimize the impacts of climate change. We already have some changes. Now, so the goal 13 puts at the center of countries' development to ensure that the actions which will both increase our resilience, that is, we plan and develop our economy in a way that the disasters that were listed out by the two eminent panelists, their impact is minimized. At the same time, so that's essentially, you could say that goal number 1, which is to strengthen the resilience and adaptive capacity. Now that's basically a goal, but the second most important one is to take this into integrating climate measures into national policies, strategies, and planning. Because if you don't do that, I mean, we won't be able to achieve those. And I think the other two eminent panelists also highlighted the third important part of it, which is to improve education, awareness raising, human and institutional capacity. We are doing part of it today because of the efforts of Professor Chaddha. And that is very important because as both the other two eminent panelists mentioned, it's not simply just government's responsibility to take action. It is our responsibility as well, as society, as individuals. And for us to be able to take action, it is very important that we are able to we are aware of it, we have enough information, and to understand what we can do to contribute and how do we support the government enabling to address this big challenge. So those are the three main targets for each of the country. Then there is two other goals which are more connected with the support that needs to be provided to the developing countries. So one is related to the financial institution, and if we later on, if we talk about UNFCCC, I'll elaborate a bit more on that. And there the countries got together in the negotiation and agreed that developed countries will mobilize up to $100 billion a year. And this will flow into developing countries to help them use their own resources in a way that they increase their resilience and reduce their GHG emissions. And the last one is, again, providing support to capacity building. So I think I'll stop here, Professor Chaddha.
Right.
If there are any other questions, then I can answer the other.
Yeah, we will be continuing, sir. Now coming on to, sir, one, like you have very rightly, indicated that goal number 13.1, which lays down that the disaster, it talks about disaster risk and its mitigation. I would just like to know that the worldwide, how many people are affected by such kind of disasters? Is there some data about this? And then what, some countries are doing, which even at Indian point of view, we can replicate. And thereafter, Dr. Raju, who has done a lot of work therein, he can also speak about his own experiences in Andhra Pradesh, because that's the coastal the belt as such. Yeah.
Right, Professor Chaddha, what I'll do is I'll just lay out the broader picture at a global level, how countries are approaching it. So there are two pillars which are important to understand. So there is a panel called Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. It comes up with regular reports at a frequency of 4 to 5 years, which carries out the assessment both of what is the trajectory of global GHG emissions, where are these emissions happening, but more importantly, it also looks at that if we do not take action, or if we take action to a certain extent, or if we take significant actions, what will be the future impact, what is the current impact, and what will be the future impact on climate. And when we say impact, Dr. Panigrahi talked about that, and Dr. Raju also referred to it. It's in terms of what is the sea level rise that we will see. What is the average temperature change that we are likely to see? How does that change the whole rainfall pattern in the countries? And then subsequent impact on humans being affected because of increased flooding or droughts, loss in agriculture productivity, increase in diseases, as Dr. Panigrahi mentioned. Sea level rise will lead to a lot of submergence, not only, as you mentioned, Professor Chaddha, of small islands, but India has a 7,000-kilometer long coastal line. So we are as a country, India is very vulnerable to the rise in sea level. Like, for example, Bombay, which is the economic hub of our country, would be very massively impacted, even with a 1.5 meters rise in. So that's the report which basically provides the overall information on country-wise. Second is, as part of the Paris Agreement, all the countries have been asked to develop what is called the National Adaptation Plan. So this is to understand what is the vulnerability to climate change of the countries, and how can that vulnerability be addressed, by what different actions can be taken, how to take these actions, what is the amount of resources that would be required, what are the different policies, regulations that would be required. So this is a very important set of document for a country, because it provides us with the vision that if we want to minimize whatever impacts we will still face from climate change, how can we go about doing it? And that's then directs our development plan, so that we don't plan in a way that actually it makes it worse for us. So with that, I will stop, Professor Chaddha, and maybe Dr. Panigrahi and Dr. Raju can add to the Indian context.
Yeah, Dr. Panigrahi, would you like to add upon what Dr. Sharma said in terms of disaster risk?
Yes, Dr. Sharma very nicely put forward all the structure and the basic things that is happening right now. So nothing more to add in that. As you told, disaster, it is one of the manifestation of climate change impact, which needs very aggressive and immediate action. And my home state is Odisha, which is also a coastal belt, and along with Andhra, and so there is a lot of super cyclone, and that's has become a life in this coastal belt. And now if you remember 99, the super cyclone that took away around 11,000 plus, near about 12,000 people's life, and it was very havoc. And unfortunately, it is one of the first disasters in India, as well in the world. And so no preparedness was available. Now even the cyclones are coming of higher magnitude, but because of early warning system, because of the disaster resilience initiatives which has been taken in much before in a planned manner, there is a evacuation centers where people in lakhs are taken from their villages to the shelter places, where they are given temporary tent-based shelter in a comparatively higher elevation and away from the coast, where the implications of high wind speed will not impact their lives, and they are given some temporary food and shelter till it is done, and then the clearance and this thing takes place and they are shifted. So this has become a regular phenomenon these days, and earlier it used to be in 6 years or some 2-3 days. It is something like 3 months in a year kind of things. You will listen one after another name. It is coming next month, it is coming this month. So IMD has Indian Meteorological Department has established a special IMD center there, and which is absolutely doing the modeling in the flow of pressure belt studies on Bay of Bengal, and early warning system has been very daily basis. It has been operationalized through Indian ISRO satellite mechanism. So many things are taking place, and this is disaster is one of the most important aspect which cannot be ignored. And like Sir told, Dr. Sharma told, the adaptation fund has been created. Climate fund has been created to address the this kind of climate actions, but those are not enough, and because it is a huge problem, and which needs massive action by all the stakeholders. And COVID is certainly a unexpected great setback to mankind, and our life has been second because of COVID. But COVID is could be a short term or a unexpected things which has impacted um, uh, 175 million people has gone is who were has nice livelihood to sustain themselves, again gone back to extreme poverty, the number one goal. That this is United Nations projection, and UN has allocated 5 billion US dollar to tackle only COVID these things. But climate change is a permanent danger and a long-term danger, and which is continuous. And we cannot forget climate change because of COVID. So the parallel action along with the COVID, the climate action is, you say, agree or not, it has been adversely impacted because of COVID, because funds are diverted, human activities, attentions are diverted. So climate action, whatever little bit action was there for adaptation and mitigation, now that much also not happening, which is a greater concern related to climate.
Right. Right. Okay, Dr. Raju, thank you, Dr. Panigrahi. Dr. Raju, would you like to share your experiences, how you manage this Krishna River floods and all?
Yes. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Sharmaji and Dr. Shrikant. Actually, so there is a lot of improvement. The government alertness are also warning systems. For example, just now, the Shrikant sir told that about Orissa and Andhra Pradesh are more prone for cyclones and floods. But the capacity of the state, the capacity of the public also has gone very well, that the damages or the loss of lives are brought to various minimum. For example, is that Hudud cyclone is there. So in that also, so earlier the recovery time is quite long. Now in Hudud, almost in a week's time or 10 days time, the everything normalcy would able to be restored. So another important thing is we cannot view the climate change goal number 13 alone. So it is interlinked with other goals like goal number 6, clean water sanitation, affordable energy, goal number 7, sustainable cities and communities, nothing but disasters. That is sustainability means they must withstand the cyclones or disasters are there. So the loss should be get reduced, and also that goal number 14 and 15, that is life below water and life above land. Life above land is directly impact of climate change. If high temperatures are there, the people with 78 years, they cannot sustain that one. And one good example is the failure. I think some people may say the problem are failure, but the failure and problems are the stepping stones for the future. One best example is in 2009, there was Krishna floods were there. So that is the state river between Maharashtra, Karnataka, now Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. So the system was so improved, of warning systems are there. I was also a special officer there. So almost we could able to manage a flood of Srisailam Dam, which was designed for 16 lakh cusecs of flood, but about 26 lakh cusecs of flood has materialized. But we could able to manage that no structure is damaged, and people were brought away, taken to safe places, and also the loss of life was also like this one also. So we are doing good work, but should not be complacent. Still, a lot of things are there, but the public must be made a part of it. So what normally the Indian democracy, every common man is become a fashion, playing the government, playing the officers if something happens. But they must be a part of that one. Actually, the UNICEF is doing this. UNICEF, the Hyderabad regional office has established Center for Sustainable Goals for empowering the stakeholders. The empowerment of stakeholders, not only officialdom, also the public also, and child-centric disaster management also. Actually, climate change and disaster risk reduction is a part of it. Yes, I would like to add the Sendai framework. Actually, that first that framework for disaster risk reduction was thrown open for the world, but our Prime Minister has made a consequence of that one. 10-point program was also declared, notified by the government of India. So the 10-point program is nothing but reduce the loss of lives, reduction of damages, and also the recovery, and also resilience. Resilience is more important. Actually, sustainable cities and community means they must be get prepared that some cyclone comes. What best precautions they must take it. Just now, our Sharma Sahab also told that whenever a disaster comes, we'll be operating temporary evacuations and all those things. It is involving a lot of finance. So that is not a constructive or it is any developmental work. We are wasting money. Instead of that, so resilience part is more important, improving the warning system and make people also mentally prepared. They should not look to government for everything. That when cyclone comes, no officer has come, nobody has evacuated, and all those things. People feel that the life is a part of disasters. That is very important. And also clean energy. That climate change is very, very important now. So India is the only developing country, but just Sharma Sahab told that developed countries must come to the handy of these developing countries and least developed countries, because their finances will not be there. So, for example, now 60% of Indian power is dependent on thermal power only. So, the thermal power is indirectly adding to our climate change. Carbon emissions are there. How long we can say that we need power and thermal power is there? We must switch over to the solar power. But the other thing, disaster risk reduction, that is the goal of this one else. We cannot avoid nature. We cannot go against the nature. Only thing is how best we can minimize the things. That is very important. I gone through one UN report that published on Sustainable Development Goals in 2019. What they say that there is a rise in global mean temperature was raised by 1.5 degrees above the free baseline level, and from 1998 to 2017, the disasters have claimed about 1.3 million people in a span of 20 years. So atmospheric carbon emission concentration is now 146% of pre-industrial level. So the limit of ultimately, so by end of 2030, you see that by global carbon emissions need to fall to 55% that of the 10 years, and ultimately zero to by 2050. And also the limitation of the 1.5 degrees. It is all interlinked. So one thing is there, disaster is a consequence about for global goal number 6 is water and sanitation. If drought years is there, drought is happening because of climate change only. So we must have a resilience. That means build more dams, more reservoirs. So this is the thing. Right. And public must be 100% participate. That's why either your ATI or our IHRDI ATI doing is empowering the people and building capacity of people. So that is more important. And communication is very, very important. That is the thing else. And the resilience must be there. These are my suggestions, some of the things. Thank you very much.
Right. Sir, Dr. Sharma has worked a lot for the UNFCCC, that is United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Sir, would you like to elaborate for our viewers what actually it is all about, UNFCCC?
Thank you, Professor Chaddha. Yes, that's the primary body or primary document which governs the global collaborative effort in addressing climate change. So let me step back a bit. So as UN Environment Program, we are the agency responsible for assessing the state of environment every 4 years. And this report goes to the General Assembly. So after the famous 1972 publication, which first highlighted that global warming can happen because of the increase in GHG emissions, a report was prepared by UNEP, which was submitted to the General Assembly. And as a part of that process, it was recognized that climate change is an emerging environmental global threat, and countries need to come together to address that. So the negotiations started somewhere in late 80s, and these negotiations culminated in 1992 with what is called the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So that's the UNFCCC. So as it says, it's a framework. It doesn't set out the policies, but it sets out the broad framework that how the countries will cooperate, what are the key areas of cooperation that countries need to focus on. And this document also, as Dr. Satyanarayana Raju was mentioning, recognized two very key principles which are important. One is the principle of taking action even if information is not fully available. It's like buying insurance, medical insurance. We don't know whether we are going to fall sick, but there is always a probability that we will of some or other disease. So we buy insurance. So it's called the precautionary principle. So even if we are not fully aware of what the impacts would be, the countries should take action. So that was one. Second, it was realized that not all countries have equally contributed to the climate change, because some countries have emitted more greenhouse gases. Some have emitted less greenhouse gases. So like developing countries, India, Thailand, Vietnam, Africa, they have emitted much less because they have been slow on the development process. Whereas Europe, US, they have emitted much more. Second, it also recognized that some of the countries have larger resources, again, the developed country. So they can take more actions as well as provide more resources to other countries. So this is called the common but differentiated responsibility. And then within that, it identified 4 pillars. Mitigation, how do we reduce GHG emissions? How do we take actions to increase our resilience capacity and take actions for adaptation? What are the tools or means which are required to implement these actions? So that's finance, capacity building, and technology. And Dr. Panigra is on the TIFAC, so I'm sure he discusses a lot on those areas. So these are the very, very important resources that are required, and who will contribute to these resources? How will these resources be provided? And the final pillar, which is very important, and I think we touched a little bit in earlier comments, I think Dr. Satyanarayana Raju just mentioned that, is that we need to know where we are. If we don't know where we are in our efforts, we don't know what we need to do. So all the countries are required to provide a report every 4 years initially on what is the GHG emissions, what are the actions they are taking, and as a result of those actions, how much emissions are being reduced. Now, with the new Paris Agreement, these reports have to be submitted every 2 years. And an additional element which is added to that is that there will be a stock taking every 5 years to see that, okay, how far have we come in taking actions and how far we still need to go. So that way, framework convention, UNFCCC provides that framework. Now, under the framework, there are different bodies. One is called the Conference of Parties, the COP, which meets every year. And then there are 2 technical bodies, which is a scientific, now I'm so used to the scientific body for implementation and scientific body for science and technology. So SBSTA and SBM. So these 2 bodies meet every 6 months to review various information, to develop new guidelines, to identify new policies. And at the COP, these are considered because these are technical bodies, they make a recommendation. And then the COP is the one which actually adopts the decision. Now, the convention also provides a framework for adopting separate decisions where specific actions are listed. So one of those was Kyoto Protocol. In Kyoto Protocol, if you remember, it was not separate from UNFCCC, it was a product of UNFCCC. It clearly outlined that these number of countries which are listed in Annex 1 will take these actions and reduce so much emissions by such and such date. So that expires this year in 2020. In 2015, because Kyoto Protocol was going to adopt and end in 2020, and Kyoto Protocol only had actions for developed countries. It didn't have action for developing countries. So India, China, Malaysia, Africa, they didn't have to take any specific actions. So Paris Agreement kind of updated the Kyoto Protocol in a way. And it brought in that all countries, because by then it was realized that it cannot be just developed countries, all countries need to take action. Though at the same time, Paris Agreement still maintains that developing countries would be provided support, both on technical side, on capacity side, and on finance side, to take actions. So that's the broader framework. And if there are any further questions, I'll be happy to answer that. Thanks.
Sir. Yeah. Dr. Saab, you very elaborately highlighted, how this.
Professor Chaddha, if I may add just one more little information. There are 192 countries which are party to the convention. Sorry, I forgot to mention.
Yes, sir. Yeah, Dr. Panigiri, can you elaborate what India has actually done in this regard in terms of implementation of UNFCCC? What were the various steps that we have taken? If you can just please elaborate very briefly.
Uh, yes. It's Dr. Sharma very well told that he told right from 1972 all the historic perspective. 1992 that Arc Summit, Rio Summit, the three conventions took place in Rio, started taking part. One is, as Dr. Sharma told, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, United Nations Convention for Conservation of Biological Diversity, for combating desertification. So UNFCCC took birth in 1992. Since that day, mm, uh, 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 each year, all the parties, like Dr. Sharma mentioned, 192 member countries of UNCCC, they meet, come together in conference of parties. That is called COP. COP 1, COP 2, COP 3, like that. And he has already mentioned about it. So um, Germany was the leader who shown a lot of interest in supporting and giving leadership in UN Triple FC, and the Bonn was the headquarter was established in Bonn in Germany, and first two COPs was organized in Germany, Bonn itself. And subsequently from COP 3 took place in Japan, in Kyoto, and the Kyoto Protocol come there, where so all these are there. Like in Delhi, we organized COP 8, Conference of Parties 8. India has taken, as you asked about India, if you remember 1972, two prime minister took place to participated on this international conference on human environment, which was hosted by Norway, and then Norwegian Prime Minister and the Indian Prime Minister Mrs. Gandhi, and the concern for environment was first time the world realized, and our common future where, and the issue of climate change and greenhouse gases that Dr. Sharma already mentioned, it started from there. So India, if you see the history of environment protection or climate change, India is always in the leadership role, and irrespective of a developing country, lack of resources, but India has expressed enough willingness, and India is taking the lead always. And so also in Rio, I was very fortunate to a part of the government delegation and participated in Rio Conference Art Summit 1992. And many of the COPs, I have part of the Indian negotiation team as well. Not, although not all, but most of them, and many of them. And COP 8 we have organized in Delhi. And so any country proposed to organize it, and it happens. Like the last ones happened in Madrid. It was supposed to happen in Chile, but because of some political unrest and civil disturbances, Chile regretted and walk out in last moment. So it was, whereas Spain agreed to organize it, so it was shifted to Madrid, in where the COP 25 was organized. COP 21 happened, as Dr. Sharma told, in Paris, COP 21. And COP 21, this Paris Agreement came, historical this thing. I was instrumental in drafting INDC, Indian National Determined intended national determined contributions, which has become NDC after the approval of the Paris Agreement. And I was one of the key contributor and reviewer and preparing the document. And so that gives India's commitment for Paris Agreement. What India is willing to do, like Dr. Sharma told, in 2020, that is this year, which is running, on 31st December, the Kyoto Protocol will come to an end, which is operational now since 2012. And and after the Kyoto ends, the Paris climate change protocol or the Paris Agreement will start rolling from 1st January 2021. And COP26 was supposed to happen in Glasgow this year, but because of COVID and all these things, a lot of preparation is required before holding it. So it was decided to postpone. It could be in post-March, maybe in April, May sometime in 2021 in Glasgow only. And so India is one of the, among these 192 countries, India has always played a leadership role and very strongly participated not only in formation of these conventions. India has represented in leadership roles and still playing leadership roles in many of the initiatives in World Bank Global Environmental Facility, like Dr. Sharma told, Global Climate Fund, UNFCCC, in all the institutions which are global in nature. And in India, if all of us must know, I was also played a key role. I drafted some key technical and policy making documents for Government of India in this particular sector. When I was principal advisor in Planning Commission, I was instrumental in drafting a document, National Action Plan for Operationalizing CDM in India, based on which the carbon trading rolled in India. And it was I was fortunate to present the findings of the as a member secretary of a working group to then Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji in 2003 December 6th on this National Action Plan on CDM for India. Subsequently, I was instrumental playing a major role in conceptualizing, and with input from all the ministries and government, I again played the key role in drafting NAPCC, National Action Plan on Climate Change, which is being implemented by the Prime Minister's office. And there are eight missions involved in it. Like one is for solar mission, one is for water mission, Himalayan mission, like that. So, so that is the structure we are following in our country. That has come up to INDC recently and Paris Agreement. And International Solar Alliance is one of the key initiative by the India, which is for the entire planet to contribute the planet with solar leadership, particularly among developing and underdeveloped countries in those who are topical 121 solar rich countries.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Panikkady. Now my next question is to Dr. Sudhir Sharma. Sir, this Paris Agreement, which talked about reducing the greenhouse gases emissions by 2% per annum, and even ideally by 1.5% per annum. Do you think they are the target that has been set is on track, and or do you think that it has been derailed? Dr. Sharma?
Please unmute. I think he has to unmute.
Yeah, my apologies. I didn't realize I was muted.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Professor Chaddha. That's a very critical question at this point in time to us. So as you mentioned, the goal of Paris Agreement is that we should make all efforts to limit the increase in temperature above the industrial temperature to well below 2 degrees.
Right.
We have almost achieved close to 1 degree increase in temperature already. I think Dr. Panigrai mentioned earlier in his remarks, to do that, we need to reduce the total amount of emissions we need to be net zero by 2070, which means the developed countries will have to go net zero by 2050 or earlier if they can.
Mm-hmm.
And countries like China, India, Malaysia, Indonesia, which are larger emitting countries. They are developing countries. I won't call China a developing country, but in the convention, it is still classified as developing country. Since they contribute a large amount, the expectation is that they would somewhere between 2050 and 2060 go carbon neutral. So what it means is not zero emissions, but the emissions should be offset by increase in forest area so that there can be carbon absorption. So that's the goal. If we look at the NDCs which have been submitted till 2030, we are almost 10% above the required reduction. So we need to do much more to reduce if we want to keep on track of the Paris goal. In fact, COVID has, the only positive side of COVID has been that it has reduced the emission temporarily. It will increase again, but it is also an opportunity for countries to actually use the stimulus package to see that rather than going back to the old kind of development that we follow, can we change this trajectory? And the reason I say that is, I'm sure you all remember the 2008 financial crisis, which happened. And in the financial crisis, a number of countries put together a financial recovery package. And about 60 to 70% of that resources went into energy efficiency and renewable energy at that time. And as a result of that, the growth in renewable energy that the globe has seen over 14 years has been tremendous. So yes, COVID has been a kind of very heavy negative impact on societies, but it's also an opportunity for us to change the course. So that's one opportunity. Otherwise, we will be back to the same level. But not to end on a negative note, just right. Some of the positive news which has come out is Europe has adopted a goal that they will reduce their GHG emissions to net zero by 2050. China has set a goal of getting net zero by 2060. We have seen in US, President-elect Biden has already announced that as soon as he takes office, he will be rejoining the Paris Agreement. And they have agreed that by 2035, they will decarbonize their electricity sector. So it's not yet a net zero target, but it's still a significant target because you must remember energy contributes 72% of the total GHG emissions. So there is a momentum building, but as you correctly mentioned, we are not yet on the right path. Thank you. I'll stop.
Thank you. Dr. Srikanth Panigrai, what do you think are the resources required to, take such a huge challenge of mitigating the climate change? And do you think India, let's say specifically talk about India, does India have these resources in terms of manpower, in terms of financial resources and other resources to come up victor to whatever targets have been given to us? Though we are, as you rightly said, we are in the leadership roles and we want things to happen. But there's always a conflict between the economic development on one hand side and to the pollution and greenhouse gas emission on the other hand side. Dr. Srikanth Panigrai. And thereafter Dr. Sharma and Dr. Raju, if you can add upon.
Professor Chaddha, it's again a very important question. And like Dr. Sharma has already pointed out, in even FCCC has two different key panels. One is looks after technology, another looks after finance. And climate change is not an easy issue to tackle. We need collective action from all the stakeholders, and we need a lot of financial resource augmentation. At the same time, right technology at the right point of time. So India being a developing country, it is obvious and it is understood we have certainly financial constraints. And but interesting to note that the US, who is the historic largest emitter, compared to them, our actions are nothing incredible. And if you see our commitment, even in NDC, it is very aggressive. And India, now the largest greenhouse gas emitter is China, followed by USA, followed by European Union, and then comes India. Many people argue European Union is not a country, so India is the third largest emitter. So anyhow, we are contributing substantially to global greenhouse gases. So now India has a plan. So far as NDC commitment is concerned, we have a interministerial committees, steering committees, and all that in place. And there are constant strategies. Up to 2030, India has committed India has committed 12 commitments, but comparatively three are very important, which needs huge finance as well as technology. The first one is to reduce the carbon intensity of the GDP at the rate of 33%, and which our policies are in place. India is almost about to achieve 175 gigawatt in renewable energy, and that action plan is on very aggressively getting implemented. And in solar, we have huge achievements, followed by wind and biomass and a small hydro sector. And we have also committing by 2030, it will be at the tune of 450 gigawatt, which is very ambitious, but it is possible. We have a detailed action plan on behalf of the government, and how it will be done, there is details worked out for that. And in addition, like Dr. Sharma has pointed out, there are many financial institutions has been created globally. So also in India, we have adaptation fund, the National Adaptation Fund. We have a allocation of some fund towards adaptation, which is largely managed by this one of the government agriculture sector organization, headquarters is in Mumbai.
NABARD.
NABARD. So they are managing this adaptation related measures, and on behalf of the government. And we are the among the first in the world to put a cess on the coal production. Like for every ton of 1 ton of coal production, we have put a levy that is environment tax, because the coal is not clean fuel. So so to discourage the fossil fuel and non-clean sources, at least started with 50 rupees per ton. If Coal India as a public sector or any coal producing organization, whatever their production, before it gets sold, 50 rupees will be the cost towards contributed for this fund. So this fund, now a huge amount has been created in this fund, which is largely spent for solar pumps, and encouraging giving solar pumps in various states to the poor farmers. And there are many such non-renewable energy schemes which cost is subsidized and managed, being backed by this fund. And we are also have an interministerial committee on carbon pricing. And although I agree we have not able to achieve very aggressive decisions on carbon pricing because of lack of very strong support from industry side. But there are consultations and various initiatives taking all the stakeholders into account. We have allocate, like you know, among three important commitment, the renewable energy commitment, the carbon intensity reduction commitment, and again zinc sector commitment, which Dr. Sharma told, that is by planting more number of trees, by densifying our forest, we are committed for at least 3 billion ton of carbon sink creation by 2030. So we have forest redensification plans and many. We have a Kampa fund in the Ministry of Environment and Forest. The industries who has cut trees to take their developmental activities has given some money in return to the government. So it is something 4,000 crores fund, and this fund will be spent to intensify the increase the density of the forest and creating urban forest and many greeneries in the country. So there are many such government strategies are there, and certainly we are confident what we have committed for 2030, the government should able to achieve even by post 2025. COVID is certainly derailed it to government was targeting 2025 aggressively, but it will go up to 2027, 28, be much before than 2030, as it happened in 175 gigawatt commitment in case of renewable energy commitment by 2022.
Right, right, sir. Thank you, Dr. Panigiri. I just wanted to know now that what are the various mitigation strategies undertaken worldwide to, because this is a problem which is a global problem and more so in the developed world, and rather coming on to the developed world, and then a lot of this conflict of interest also which is therein. Because it's a 80-20%, 80-20 principle, wherein the 20% people have polluted 80%, and they are using the resources of 80% also, the North America, Western Europe. And now see what are the you highlighted certain mitigation strategies all day, wherein what are these strategies that are being undertaken, and whether these strategies we could learn a few for the developing world like India also can be replicated to us, sir.
Thanks. Thanks, Professor Chaddha. I hope I am not muted. No, I am not. So as I was mentioning, and I think some of the things have already started coming out in what Dr. Panigiri and Dr. Satyanarayana Raju has put forward. So if you look at the global emissions, energy is the major source of our emissions. So we get about 72% of emissions from energy sector. Now, when I say energy, that includes all the energy that we use in residential sector, cooking, lighting, air conditioning, commercial sector, transport sector, and industry. So that's the large part of our emissions. If we break down between the industries, transport, and energy consumption in buildings, because buildings is a big sector. Buildings, whether it is commercial building, government building, or residential building, they emit about 17.5% of the total global emissions. Transport sector is another 12%. So you can see that these are two main, and then the industry, which includes power generation. And since we've been talking about, because within industry, the conversion to electricity is the biggest share of emissions. So a large part of the strategy which is there globally is on 4 pillars. So one we talked about, and India has, I must say, the most ambitious renewable energy targets, and we are kind of quite strongly progressing, and kind of looks like we will definitely overachieve rather than underachieve the targets. So that's one area, and in that, what I would say is, and where UN agencies are working very strongly, is the coal phase out. Because coal constitutes, especially in developing countries, a very significant part of GHG emissions. And if you look at various analyses which are available, it's very clear that we have to stop implementing or developing new coal power plants immediately. By 2040, we have to shut down all the coal power plants. Now, there's always a question asked that, that's the cheapest source of power for developing countries. Actually, it is not correct anymore. Today, in India, renewable energy is the cheapest source of power. And there were 2 studies, and one of them were Tata Power in India, very interesting studies. They found that actually if they shut down their 20-year or more old coal power plants and replace them by renewable energy, they'll be making a profit at the same contracts which they currently have with the government, without changing the contract. So actually, renewable energy is actually much more cheaper and competitive. And I think Dr. Panigrahi would be more aware of it. My understanding is Government of India is also actually looking into shutting down some of the old coal power plants because it adds to the electricity cost we all are paying in India. So it makes economic sense. So that's why I wanted to highlight. The other element is energy efficiency. This is the cheapest source of energy that we have. Yes, there is an upfront investment, but there are very successful policies like establishing energy efficiency standards. And in India, we did at UNEP a study. If we adopt energy efficiency standards just for air conditioners, refrigerators, electricity, motors, and transformers, we can avoid building 65 500 megawatt power plants. And it will save us somewhere in the tune of $10 billion of payment every year in electricity prices, because the kind of cost vanishes, and the investment saved of 65 power plants. So that's a very significant saving that can happen. So energy efficiency, and this is energy efficiency in buildings, and then the transport sector. So if you look at, there is a strong push, and UNEP is working on a global program with International Energy Association, agency, on helping countries move towards electric vehicles, 1, and 7, move towards public transport, including cycling and walking. So we need to create that infrastructure because most of our cities don't have that infrastructure to make it easy for all of us to either use public transport, bike, or be able to walk to close by markets. So that's the second pillar of this strategy, which is taking place. And the third pillar is, as Dr. Panigrahi mentioned, large scale, either stopping deforestation in countries where deforestation is happening, and then increasing, not only just stopping, but also increasing deforestation. So those are the 4 key strategies that are being focused on right now. And at center of these strategies is cities, because if you look at 70% of emissions directly or indirectly happen because of consumption in the city.
It is right.
Be it transport, be it the food we consume, be it the electricity that is consumed, the products which are produced outside but are consumed, like cars which are produced outside, or shirts, cycles, and everything. So what countries are doing is they're focusing on cities, and that's where the Government of India's Smart City program has a very good entry point. And recently MoHUA, and we are working with MoHUA in India, has set up a climate change center in NI, National Institute of Urban Affairs, with this very objective that if we can get the top 100 cities to integrate climate change and reduce emissions, a significant share of NDC would be achieved in that.
Right.
So those are the key strategies that are being followed at the global level. Thanks. Over to you.
Right. Thank you. Just continuing on this aspect only, because see, generally what happens is that the debates and all, they are with the academicians and the practitioners as such. It generally does not reach the common mass. My question to Dr. Raju is, because he is a man of field, how can we involve the common person into climate change mitigation, rather than talking about those jargons and all these aspects which a common person does not understand. Five common things that we can make a common person understand, so that the entire climate action is impacted as such. Dr. Raju.
Okay, I think there are two, three aspects. One thing is common man is involved rarely in urban cities. Even a builder is encouraged to establish a solar power. That can be regulated. So that is one way that every common man who is building a building, he must be allowed to have a solar power. So giving some incentives, that is one of the thing. But one more thing is intentions are good. That is, every government is enlarging the establishment of solar power. For example, in Gujarat, they are building solar power over a canals to have operational, to limit operational losses, and actually in a big way in the AP and Telangana also, the solar power they started installments. Even the people will wonder that even Singareni collieries who is producing power, thermal power, they are also gone in establishing solar power. So the only way out, I think, carbon emissions, the reason for carbon emission is only the power generation by fossil fuels. So that is the important thing. But
Right.
common man is able to understand. But here one problem is how to conservation of power. That's like conservation of this water is also important. That common man must be educated that they must go in for star products, not for because the Chinese product is coming at cheap. Everybody is going for it. Instead of that, if you go for a 3-star, 4-star electrical consumer, the things they go for that can be done. And the only thing is the common man must feel that whatever power is coming at the cost of the taxpayers' money. Now the cost of power per unit is about 6 to 7 rupees. So unfortunately, the solar power capital cost has come down like anything. That's why there is a big enlargement of solar power by every state. So one time the unit cost of solar power is 9 rupees. Now it has come down to 4 to 5 rupees. The only way is, so at one point of time, Dr. Sharma is told that you must shut down all the thermal power stations and go in for the renewable power. Of course, the hydropower is renewable, is very cheap, but only thing availability of water will be confined to 3-4 months from during the rainy season only. And wind power and solar power in a big way. But common Indian citizen is very enlightened persons. Only thing they must be included into the policy of the government. They must feel that the government is not somebody else. Government is there. Actually, their tax money is being spent on these all the things. That is the thing. Now, NIDM is actually, we know that Disaster Management Act that has come in 2005. NIDM is not only for disaster management, they are also putting valuation this climate change also. They are conducting a lot of empowerment and also building capacities for the things. So you must say that one more important thing is that CAMPA funds. Actually, I am a irrigation water sources man. For getting any clearance from the Minister of Environment and Forest, we are depositing hundreds of crores of money. That is, so now the general comment in India is that thousands of crores CAMPA fund is getting idle. Why can't you utilize the CAMPA fund for this climate change mitigation? That is very, very important. So one time we have reduced the forest area to 25% manually. Now we started afforestation. So by motivating the people, now we have started in the beginning. So definitely that star production. I think electrical goods consumption of star products public must be created awareness. The cost, I think government can give some subsidy. Whoever is coming forward to buy the electrical this one else and utilization. And now don't let us not think that people are very wise. They are very literate. They know all the things. Only thing is complacency is the crux of the problem of India. So they must be a part of that because of the subsidies, government of this political, all the things that they want to please the public. So the people are not coming into the main limelight and into the administration of this thing. So that sensitization is very important. This is my view.
Right.
I will take just 1 minute. Dr. Raju brought out wonderful issues and which are very important. And I will just supplement to the point of Dr. Sharma. Like the government, the so far as these polluted sources are concerned, the fossil fuel. If you see the cost of electricity production through thermal power plants, it is all above 5 rupees 35 paisa. The 5 rupees 35 paisa to 7 rupees 90 paisa is the range. In rural and urban areas, there are different tariff structure throughout the country. Nowhere it is less than 5 rupees 34 paisa. Whereas solar cost is as cheap as 2 rupees 43 paisa. So, which is, less than the half of the cost of the thermal. So, there is a lot of international pressure on government of India to close down the thermal power plants. But India being a developing country, we need a huge electricity, huge quantity of power, and till we achieve that infrastructure and production and generation of power from renewable route, till then we have to keep managing, pushing coal also parallelly, and now the market itself has reached to a point. The coal will remain below the ground and as a precious diamond, but it will never be exploited because market sentiments will not favor it to make happen, which Dr. Sharma has already pointed out the example of Tata Power, and that is a fact, and that is not the only fact. In addition, there are many such power plants are getting closed down, and it is being regulated through markets, not by the government. Government coal lobbies are also very active on government, if you understand. And but government has also aggressive policies on coal sector. Now India has a very flexible kind of policy, regulation and guidelines on coal sector and thermal sector development. That has been tightened. The emission standard has been very strict standards has been notified, and those who are not adhering to that, the answer is closed down. They cannot be given any time period to achieve that. And all the substandard, age-old thermal power plants who are operating, being obsolete without new technology, or who doesn't have capacity for technology upgradation, and they also has been identified and notified, because they are a huge loss of energy, and it is not making any sense of producing coal at that rate, either the raw material cost or any of the cost in the life cycle chain of a thermal power plant. So both scientifically and market force wise, it is 2040 is a long target, and I can see 2025-27 could be the end of the thermal power plant situation in India. The way we are going, and Honorable Prime Minister's policy is, he told himself that it is very difficult to take very drastic action to totally 100% shut down, to make an order to shut down the coal plants and thermal power plants which are operating, and rather we should back the renewable energy and the proactive market forces which will make it happen, instead of doing it happen through policy directive. From 2014 this was his direction, and because of aggressive solar the policies, that is ultimately happening, that we can witness. And in addition, on pricing regulations, and in TIFAC, what we are doing, we are assessing to make to ensure the sustainable development in India, like how much energy we will be requiring in which year. Now 2035 we have action plan. So to make it happen, how much renewable we must do, and in which way we should do the action plan for that, and what are the indigenous renewable energy technology we are already having. We have a lot of research which is not been commercialized. So that part has been enhanced, and right from DRDO and all the Prime Minister Scientific Advisory Council, they're round the working to push the local indigenous technologies which are proven to upscale, and which has never happened in this country. Research has remained in the books, in the Almirah, and that action has been initiated. And at the same time, what are the need for technology transfer, particularly for the energy sector from developing country, and in which way, and what kind of technology, with what kind of financial allocations we can do it in a sustainable manner. TIFAC is engaged in, and we are already ready with our policies and programs for both from technology transfer route as well as upgrading the indigenous technology through innovations and all this. So that master plan is ready for 2035. Now TIFAC is working for 2050 target, keeping 2 degrees centigrade into account.
Sir, right. Thank you.
Professor Chaddha, if I may quickly add to what Dr. Satyanarayan Raju mentioned, just two elements. I think he pointed out very important part. India has a labeling program for energy efficient appliances. And one of the things we all can do is actually buy energy efficient appliances and not buy any other appliances. That's a nationalistic duty because it reduces our energy cost and our emissions. There are two other areas which we don't realize on a day, three other areas I would say we don't realize. One is use of plastics. Use of plastic contributes 2.5% to global GHG emission.
Right.
And we use a lot of plastic, and we don't realize it because we have got so used to it. And this is in each individual. Government doesn't have to do anything. If we can carry a bag with us whenever we go out, it's a very simple thing. It's only changing your behavior. I remember my parents, even I used to, I'm quite old that way, we used to go to shopping with bags on our shoulder. So it's not that long ago that we used to use bag. We can go back to that.
Right.
The second is what has happened in India as we have become richer, and that's not just India, most of the countries, and it's a problem in developed countries even more. Food wastage. 8% of the global emission comes from food wastage. So even if we can reduce our food wastage by 50%, and this is something which is again our individual control, we can very easily reduce emissions. So that's two important elements. The third element, what I would say is what we need from the government side, and I would basically say from our side to the government, that government, like it produces a GDP report every year, it should actually produce a report, environmental GDP report every year, to tell us and inform us. And also that report should not only include what government is doing, it would also say that what you as an individual can do, what we have done and what you can do to contribute to it. And the third thing which we did at UN in 2001, we established a committee. We said that, okay, let's start creating an inventory of our GHG emissions. And today we have managed to reduce, actually we are the fastest among all the countries if we consider UN as a country. Compared to 2000, we have reduced 50% of our GHG inventory. So similarly, there are a lot of apps where as an individual, you can actually put your data in and calculate when you do different things, how much emissions you generate in a year. And that can tell you that, okay, what can be. So there is a gentleman called Dr. Wang Chu in India. I think he's started an amazing initiative, and I have pledged actions to that initiative, where he has essentially said that just look at your actions and tell me that, you know, what little actions can you take which will reduce your GHG emissions. I will send you the link, Professor Chaddha, and I think it's a wonderful initiative. And that's where we as individuals can very effectively contribute. to climate change.
Sir. Right, right. Sir, the one last question, and thereafter, many questions I think.
Dr. Chaddha, one small supplement.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
In Indian Institute of Sustainable Development, we have 12 campaigns, which is public outreach programs, in which one is against single-use plastic. That's Dr. Sharma has pointed out. Another is for reduction of food waste, so a lot of volunteers on a planned way create public awareness, and not only create public awareness, but also they take actions, like the points at which food waste are happening, they go there and take action. And the next thing is the individuals that climate friendly lifestyle campaign and so on, we are already doing. And we have a special group which is works for green GDP, and we are constantly trying to push government that GDP is and a lot of ambassadors from different countries in New Delhi, from key countries, they are into this green GDP forum of IIST, who are participating on a regular basis in consultative meeting, and they are trying to create, impress the governments throughout the world that GDP, so-called GDP, which is not the right way of calculating GDP, because so many natural resources accounting and the other issues related to environment has to be reflected. Otherwise, the planet will not survive. So I am very glad that this has been raised by Dr. Sharma, and in this forum, I think all those who are participating, they can participate in IIST's this program. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. One last question, and I think both of you are very experienced to answer this question. Is that there's a principle known as polluters pay, and a carrot and a stick policy. Now, my question is how is this being applied, or whether to what extent this has been successful, in bringing about the behavioral changes, and we can say it's a behavioral change in the various developing and the developed world, so that the climate action is mitigated, and we should start thinking of the Mother Earth.
Do you want to start, Dr. Panigrahi, or should I go first? Okay, I'll go. Actually, that's a very, I think Dr. Panigrahi already mentioned that in India we have started to apply that. We have a carbon tax on fossil fuel, or on coal at least. The second polluter pays principle is there in the carbon markets. What was done, and Europe did a very successful experiment. India was also a big participant in that. In Europe, what they did was, to achieve their Kyoto Protocol, they established a pathway and they gave targets to the industry and told the industry that you can only emit so much. If you want to emit more than that, either you have to pay a tax to the government, or there was an incentive to companies who can reduce below their target. They could actually sell those certificates. Now, what that did was a wonderful thing, because it gives you flexibility as a company. Either you pay a tax, or you reduce, or you buy a certificate. So a lot of innovation started coming in, because, and it also gave a certainty, because the companies became clear that the government is going to tax them. And as a result, they were able to achieve their Kyoto targets much faster than that. And that's what Dr. Panigrahi referred to. In India, there are efforts going on. Industry always opposes it. But it is something that we are working with a number of countries. We have successfully worked with Singapore. Singapore has introduced a carbon tax. And the interesting part is, they have not only introduced carbon tax on companies, they have introduced a carbon tax in the electricity. So the more electricity you consume and more it is from fossil fuel, the higher tax it individuals. So even people like us, if we were living in Singapore, and it shows separately in your bill, so that you know that how much you are actually paying for carbon tax. So that has that kind of creates the consciousness, because then I would realize that if I use energy efficiency, I can reduce the tax. If I can ask the government to supply renewable energy, my tax will go down. So it is a very important part. But equally, what these countries are also doing, like in Singapore, we help them set up a training program and awareness program of what are their options, how can they actually reduce their taxes, where they can go to get help from the government in adopting different technologies. So it's not only just putting the stick on one side, but also because I can tell you to do a lot of things, but if you don't know how to do it, you will not be very happy about it. So on the other hand, there has to be the supportive policy so that we all are aware that, okay, what actions will help us reduce these emissions. So, and EU has done it, Japan has adopted it, Australia has adopted it. We are working with Thailand. They are establishing for their industry an emission trading scheme. Vietnam has just 2 weeks back sent us a request to help them. So it's a very effective tool which helps. The second thing what we are doing is we are also telling the government to reduce other taxes. So suppose a company pays carbon tax, so you reduce the tax, say payroll tax or some other tax, so that the net burden on the company does not increase. But at the same time, the resource which is not good gets taxed. I'll stop there. Thanks.
Right.
Thank
you.
Dr.
Yeah, Ji.
So I very briefly, within 1 minute, I will tell what India is doing on this. India has taken aggressive policies on polluters pay principle, and as Dr. Sharma told, there is a lot of pressure from other stakeholders and particularly industry, and for which India is going comparatively slower. But CDM is basically a market-based tool which operates the pricing of carbon and on trading basis. And India was a leader in initiating that initiative. And followed by, there is a lot of voluntary carbon market which are still active, and although CDM has a temporarily setback, but it was very much there. And in addition to that, like Dr. Sharma told about the carbon exchanges and trading platforms in Singapore, to my knowledge, in China has also gone for aggressive, they being the #1 emitter of greenhouse gases, they have also trading program. But many of the things they have not made public, and how it will work and how it will happen. But they have already declared, and they say that they are working in this for last 3 years. And India, for India, the Carbon Minus India is a small organization and IIST's initiative, which is trying for bringing such a trading platform, because government realizes that directly it will not be possible for government to get involved, but government would like to certainly back if there is a public initiative. So we, being a think tank and working in the knowledge domain for the people, with the people, we are creating a platform on behalf of Carbon Minus India for this creating a trading platform for India, and we have some good responses. But however, government has influenced the prime industrial leaders whose GSG emission is very high, and they have adopted some kind of voluntary measures. Like Mahindra has committed $10 per ton of carbon dioxide emission. So $10 they have allocated. So they will be spending and doing some aggressive actions to mitigate. And they are creating an internal industrial fund within themselves. So also Tatas are always in the forefront. They are also there, and other industries are also very supportive, and they are in the process. And we have a GSG protocol platform which has been created, which is government supported, but other non-governmental organization, where stock exchanges are also participating. If you If your production is more than 1,000 crores, then you have to submit a sustainability report to the stock exchange, which is a part of responsible business reporting. And if they are busy, and where again their carbon GSG reporting is mostly is an essential component. I am not going into detail because of lack of time.
Sir. Right, sir. Now, sir, we can take a few questions. I think many of them have been answered by you during the discourse. This one question is by Dr. Muhammad Suleiman. He wants to know about, whether if the nuclear power plants are installed in our country, would it have any effect on the climate change? Would it be for the better or would it be for the worse?
Yes.
Nuclear power plant.
Yes. So far as nuclear is a source of energy for India, we have made our policy very clear. It is not for destructive purposes. It is purely for peace and development purposes. Next thing is greenhouse gases. Nuclear energy doesn't emit, so it is not responsible for global warming. And India is positive to develop nuclear energy, provided the safety measures are in place. Because if you see the global history on nuclear energy, says Japan, says Germany, they have many disasters
Chernobyl and
with nuclear energy. So and both the country has huge restriction on it, and Germany has almost gone out of it. When I was working in Germany on behalf of UNEP, the ministry nuclear safety was a part of the environment ministry, and it is no more right now, and they are going aggressive for solar and other renewables. So and we don't have raw material in plenty in renewable energy. That is one of our this thing. But irrespective that of things, considering proper and sufficient safety measures, India is open for it. But we have a very small fraction of contribution from renewable energy. From 2%, it has probably increased to near about 3%.
right.
Just
Yeah,
Professor.
Dr. would you like to
yeah, thank you. Just one point, Dr. Panigrahi already highlighted, because the key concern is the safety, and we are a very dense populated country, and the impacts can be very significant. But more importantly, as we were saying, that what has happened is actually nuclear is no longer an economically viable energy source. It takes about 6 to 7 years to install a nuclear power plant.
Okay.
Most of the power plants, India's experience as well as world experience has been that they have cost overruns and they take 7 to 8 years to implement. And the cost of electricity that we get is almost similar to what we get for coal now. So economically, it doesn't any longer make sense to enter into area which has dangers if God forbidding something goes wrong. And that's the reason, as Dr. Panigrahi was very correctly mentioning, Germany has gone out of nuclear, and Japan has recently announced they are kind of phasing out all their nuclear power plants.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Sir, we have among us ourselves Shri Jeet Kumar Gupta ji also, who's a very eminent town planner, and he's worked with the government of Punjab also, and you would be seeing various suggestions that he's given. So, Dr. Gupta, I would like you to speak out various suggestions, so that it will be good for the audience also, and many could be taken up, because while it is in the chat box, it's okay, and many of them have been answered. Very valid suggestions you have talked about. So could you please elaborate, Mr. Jeet Kumar Gupta ji? Sir? Ji.
Thank you, Dr. Chaddha. I think listening to the experts was a wonderful experience, and we went through the entire gamut of climate change and the disaster management. But I would like to say the destruction is a part of construction. It's all built in the nature. So life subsists on life. So we will all see, one species destroying the other, and it's fittest to survive. So we are also passing through an era, we took 2 lakh years to become the first 100 crore, 18 years 4 when we were 100 crores. And you can see in last 200 years, we have gone to 780 crores. So the way we have grown, I think we have damaged the environment ecology, and we have tried to destroy the natural resources. And that's what all these pandemics are the outcome, the way we are treating nature. And that's what I think we have to understand, and we have to appreciate that unless and until we collaborate, cooperate, and promote and work on the partnership with the climate, I think we are not going to survive. Now, I think we have been looking at there are two kind of cultures, which are operating. One is a rural culture, other is the urban culture. The urban culture, we know, occupying only 2 to 3% of the area, housing now 60% of the population, producing 60% of the GDP, consuming 75% of the energy, Dr. Sharma said, and 70% of the, carbon footprints. So I think this urban culture, which is there, is practically totally destroying the total system because of this concentrated nature and working all the time, against the nature. So I think the issue remains when we're looking at the climate change, we're looking at, the where these carbon footprints are generated, and we know categorically the cities are the prime, you know, they are responsible primarily for this. But in cities, when you look at you do the analysis, Dr. Sharma did the analysis, when we also do the analysis, is the buildings and the transport, which are the two major components. And 40% of the total energy consumed is by the building. And only 10% of the energy goes into making of a building, rest of the 90% goes into operation and maintenance. So we are not looking at the energy component of the buildings when they are, that's called the embodied energy, and then operational and maintenance energy. So I think when we look at the building, we look at the life cycle of the building rather than the initial thing. So therefore, I think we have to understand, unless and until we make our building sustainable, and the projections by these McKinsey Global Institute that India needs 700 to 900 million square meter of built up space equivalent to Chicago city every year, you can think of, India needs 21,000 to 27,000 megawatt of electricity to just power these houses. So I think we need that focus on the city if climate change has to be there, that how we can make cities sustainable. But unfortunately, the way the cities are going, they are uncontrolled, their population is growing, migration is taking place so rapidly, and you see what happens in pandemics, the people had to be pushed out and going back, city never owned, and in fact, all cities are, believe in exclusion. They don't believe in inclusion, and larger the city, larger is the exclusion. So that is where, they try to push people, they try to get bigger, and they try to consume more and more energy. So I think what has already been said by Dr. Panigrahi and Dr. Sharma, that there are 100 smart cities, but cities, there are 100 smart cities, there are around 7,935 total cities. The legal cities are 4041, half of the urbanization has not taken into account. So I think we need to focus on cities, how they can be, primarily made energy efficient. In fact, if we can rationalize, if we can make our buildings green, and secondly, we can minimize the transportation. Of course, transportation, people have to be mobile, but let's change our policies, from planning for vehicle to planning for people, like Dr. Sharma said, let's go for pedestrianization or, cycling. That can only be changed, after we change our priority of mobility. We have to, plan for people, not for vehicle. The moment we plan for people, priority will change. And secondly, we have to work on promoting accessibility rather than mobility. Once we promote accessibility, people don't have to move, that technology will come in, and there are many things which can go on. So what I'm here, I think we need to, I would only suggest add to what the experts, and you are so knowledgeable. And so, what I try to say is so much work is going on in the policy level, and wonderful work has been done. There's so much literature being done, but I think at the level of university, at the level of educational institution, this knowledge sharing about climate change have not percolated to everybody. It remains compartmentalized, it remains in silos, and people don't understand. And till, basically it's we are all producer of these carbon footprints. Still we are becoming, climate centric, and we understand the genesis. It's all human being we can do for that. I would only say at last, I'm sorry, I've taken too much time. I am only saying, like we have been saying that carbon dumps have to be created. Look at this. India has only 29 trees per person, whereas Canada has 9,000 trees per person. 9,000 trees and 28, 29 tree only. Where do we stand? I think we have to understand the culture. And there are good examples like in Rajasthan, Piprana village is there, where every girl when is born 111 trees are planted. And that village alone in last 10 years have been able to plant 1.5 million trees. 15 lakhs tree have been planted in one village of Rajasthan just to commemorate those the birth of a girl, and that they are taken care of, protected. They are made to produce economic benefits, and that's run the total business of the education of the girls and everything. I will stop it here. We as a country are very diverse, knowledgeable. We have all expertise, but I think we are best in public hygiene. We are best in personal hygiene, but we are worst in the public hygiene. Personally, we are best. Nobody can beat Indian. But when we go to public, I think we become worse. Also, I think we have to graduate from public to person, so that we treat everything our own, and India will go on a great country. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Gupta, for such an enlightening sort of suggestions also, and bringing about that aspect, which is the beauty of SDG, wherein, one goal is interrelated to other. See how this goal number 13 has been integrated to the sustainable cities. And I think even the water part, which Dr. Raju was also talking about, goal number 6, and this energy goal also. So till the time it is actually integrated, and thanks for bringing about all this. Now, before ending, there are two notifications that said that e-certificate is available for those who require them, and for that we'll be sending you the feedback form. Those people who have joined us, you just have to fill it up and then send it back to us. And those new people who have joined, they can just ping upon the WhatsApp number 8727857116, and thereafter it will come in a record. And later on, this recording will be available on IHRDI YouTube channel. So which will be sending it to you. You kindly please subscribe it, like it, share it, so that a lot of information is created, which is also a part of these goals as such. And friends, a lot of very interesting discourse took up, and wherein frankly I had much more to ask, but somehow the panel was so rich and so much good discussion took up. Maybe we can have one more discussion on the same issue later on. Just to sum it up, because generally while I focus upon what a common man can do, and like Jeet Gupta ji and Sharma ji and Panigra Sahab and ISN Raju Sahab also emphasize that you have to plant more trees. Each one can plant 10 trees, as Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam talked about. Each one of us can save as much as energy as possible in terms of the lighting energy and all this. Each one of us can reduce the carbon footprints by using cycle, by walking, by even less use of plastics, by more responsible consumption. If there is a sale, we just go on and buy if the things are cheap. But then they are just laggard in our almiras later on, and after 6 months we dispose it off. So we should not actually do it. Energy should not be wasted. Alternate energy sources could be tapped and trapped, and responsible consumption should come up. Friends, there's one earth only, there's one planet, we live just once, and the planet is also there. Still a lot of research is going on, but we don't know whether there's life or not. We have to preserve it, we have to conserve it, and the earth is very kind. We have to also show kindness to that aspect, so that there is inclusive growth, and there's no one is left behind. And with these words, I would like to thank our three panelists for today: Dr. Panigari, Dr. Sudhir Sharma, Dr. ISN Raju, who have come up with such enlightening discussion and discourse. I really enjoyed the discussions and lot of understanding. I hope the audience has also liked all this. My thanks to the audience also who join us on their own on this Sunday afternoons, which is a lull period. Many of us are working also, so many things to do, but still they do it voluntarily, and it has go on. And let's hope it goes on. And we are doing a good role as such. And my thanks to the IHRDI team also, Sanya, Chaddha, then Jeet Kumar Gupta ji, Mr. JPS Talwar, who do all the background work, bringing about everything, and then working out things, and then bringing it to all of these aspects. So friends, with this, I would like to wish you happy Diwali in advance. May this festival of light bring about happiness, prosperity, good health, and this fear of pandemic may go away. May Lord Rama bless us all. And with these words, friends, time to say goodbye to all of you. Goodbye, sayonara. Keep fit, keep healthy. Thank you so much. Till next time. Thanks a lot.
Stay safe.
Namaskar.
Dr. Chaddha, I have a request